I want to continue this conversation with the Democratic Representative Stacey Plaskett of the U.S. Virgin Islands, also a great friend of our show. She served as the House manager one of the House managers for Donald Trump's second impeachment trial in 2021. So you and Dan Goldman sort of have similar perspectives on how this is all unfolded. Welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here in person, by the way.
Thank you.
Let's just talk about. For a lot of people, it's very satisfying that quote that this was caused by Donald Trump, and that the weight of the Department of Justice may come down on Donald Trump and maybe a few others. You got to see the whole thing. Some of this is Donald Trump, and some of this is an anti-democratic movement that is spread across the United States that we're seeing in domestic terrorist attacks. We're seeing in sort of the hate and the description some people use of sort of an ideological civil war.
Sure.
I'd love your take on this, because you saw this, you studied this from the beginning, from the moments when that mob started to invade the Capitol. Where are you now when you think about this report and what conclusions it's drawn?
Well, thank you for having me here, and happy holidays to you and to your family and everyone. I just think, first of all, that the January 6th committee was remarkable in the complexity at which they attacked this issue. And the issue is not just Donald Trump, as you stated. The issue is threats to democracy, which are happening all over the world. This is not just an American problem. We see what's happened in Italy, in Turkey, in other places. Hungary is gone, pretty much. And so what are we going to do as Americans? And Donald Trump used the frustration, the anger, this domestic hate that's going on right now, and harnessed it for his own good, for his own purposes, along with his, you want to call them the clown show, but they were more insidious than that.
Right.
I don't want to diminish who these individuals are by putting that on them. And so what I think is important with this report is not just detailing the facts as it occurred, but also the recommendations as to how that we ensure that this doesn't happen. One, of course, is dealing with Donald Trump, not just disgracing him, but making sure that he never runs for office. People forget that the second charge, the second instruction to the Senate would have been in the impeachment. The first is convict him of inciting an insurrection. And then the second would be a majority vote, not the 60 that was needed initially, to ensure that he never ran for office again. And I believe that, that was one of the charges that we had. That was one of the things that Speaker Pelosi was so smart about trying to get to, was to stop him in his tracks. And so I'm hopeful that we as Americans, if the Justice Department doesn't do justice and do its job, that the American people do with the information that's coming out. The fact that this report is not just putting these transcripts out there, but this is going to be an interactive website that individuals can go to and really dig in deep into what's happening in our country.
So like Dan, you were a prosecutor. You were also an appointee to the Justice Department. So you know a little about how these things, more than a little about how these things work. What would be the satisfying thing to happen next? Because the Department of Justice has all this stuff. We talked about Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. It doesn't meet the standard that the Justice Department would need, because she didn't face cross-examination and there hasn't been a full investigation into these things. What does the Justice Department do that is satisfying to the American public at this point? Do they move quickly and proceed with these charges? Do they reinvestigate everyone? What happens?
Well, for us, we had a time frame that we needed to look at. We wanted to do this while Donald Trump was in office, and so we didn't have the scope and the time that the January 6th committee does. I think that they can take...
Us means the impeachment.
The impeachment, yes, sorry. And I think that now that the committee has done the kind of work that it has, that the Justice Department has a lot of information, a lot of transcripts, a lot of things to work on. And, one of the thoughts that I would give to them is one that I've given my children, my sons in Little League Baseball, right? You could stand at the plate when you have a bad pitcher and just walk onto a base with balls.
Yeah.
But you'll never hit a home run unless you take a swing.
Right.
And so I'm hopeful that the special prosecutor, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, and others will see what the January 6th committee has given them. That fourth charge, which is the one that is probably the hardest to prove, but is the most impactful, is the insurrection
Right.
charge,
Right.
which would bar him from ever running for office again. And so while you can, as a prosecutor, I can recall, you list many charges that you're going to give someone to. Some are going to be easy to prove, but there's one in there, man, that if you get that person on that, justice is served.
What do you say to people who have argued right from the beginning, in fact, right before the impeachment, that this is too political? We are already in a highly polarized environment. The impeachment was to some people more polarizing. The committee was polarizing. Charging the former president of the United States, who says he's running for president, may be yet more polarizing. Most people tell me justice should be blind to that kind of idea. But what's your thought as a member of Congress?
I think that what we see in Donald Trump and some of these things has nothing to do with politics. I think that Donald Trump has just used the Republican Party as a conveyor for what he wants to do. And listen, America, we have this sore. We have this underlying issues that are going on in our country that need to be addressed. And one of those is the frustration that some in America feel that cause them to gravitate towards MAGA republicanism. And then there are others who just are downright hateful, that are using this to try and overturn our democracy. I think the midterm elections is one, as you've said, our discussions is one battle in a war that we are waging right now. And I think in that instance, America has showed that throughout our diversity and our complexity, the one thing that we have in common, or the majority of Americans have in common, is that we want this to remain a democracy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what we're looking towards.
It's great to see you. Thank you for being
Thank
with
you.
us. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
You've been a great friend of our show. We look forward to many, many conversations like this.
I hope so. Thank you.
Stacey Plaskett is a Democratic representative for the United States Virgin Islands.